He said, who do you think could play Daredevil? And I said, Affleck, because that's my answer for everything. Like, I just think Affleck could play. I'm a big fan, so I think he can play anything. People are like, Jaws 5. I'm like, Affleck. Affleck plays the fucking shark.
Podcast, the weekly pseudo-academic roundtable of pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. My name is Christopher Maverick, but you can call me Mav, and I am once again here with my co-host, Wayne Wise. How's it going, Wayne?
Good. How are you, Mav?
I am desperately trying to not get sick. There's a coronavirus that is worldwide that I'm told that everybody will have, like, momentarily, and I'm going to die.
I'm going retro. I have either SARS or Zika.
Ooh, Zika. Stuff's back.
It's that malt drink from the 90s.
I actually liked Zima. I don't know why, but
okay. Since we were, I'm going to interrupt the show with a Zima anecdote. I was with friends at the Decade which is a small bar in Pittsburgh.
Oh wow, the Decade, yeah.
It's legendary. Like the Police played there in 1977. For
people of a certain age, I've seen P-Funk there a couple times. Yeah, yeah. For people of a certain age, the Decade is legendary. It's gone, but it was
one of the guys in the Police is wearing a Decade T-shirt on one of the albums. Anyway, I was at the Decade with some friends, and I was going up to the bar. I was getting drinks for my friends, and a couple of them wanted Zima, and I went up and I ordered 2 Zimas, and the bartender just looked at me and went, "Yeah, right."
Oh God! I hope Sting did not see that.
So anyway, completely off topic anecdote, but there you go.
Yeah, it's the show. Stuff's back. Hey, Stephanie.
Hello, hi everybody.
Welcome back.
Stuff's going to join us for the show. And because he's laughed already, even before I mention the topic, I'm going to mention our other guest for the week is Matt Brake, who's returning to the show. Hey, Matt.
Hey,
Matt. Welcome back.
So what are your feelings on Zima? Which is the actual topic of the show. Yeah,
that's our topic this week.
Yeah. I'm going to show my ignorance here. I don't know what Zima is.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Zima.
How old are you?
He's old enough to know what Zima is.
Okay, all right.
Old enough to know better.
Zima was in the 90s. It was a clear malt beverage. It was a beer, but this was during this weird portion of the 90s where America just decided that things that were clear were healthier for you.
Yeah, it was like the Crystal Pepsi of beer.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. The Crystal Pepsi. There were all these clear drinks that were just the same drink, but so someone made a beer, but with no color.
My stomach.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't good, but it was a thing, and it turned out if you were having parties, girls really liked Zima at the time because it was a health beer. So right. So if you were a guy who wanted girls to like you learned to like Zima. It was a thing.
That's pretty much the entire history of Zima right there.
Yep. This is before I knew Stephanie. So
I'm assuming, Wayne, that these were female friends of yours that you were getting the Zima for?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
See?
Yep. I wasn't going to stereotype that way, but since it came up, yes.
I said I drank it, so I don't know. I am not as into gender roles as you people are. I'm a man secure in my masculinity, and I can drink a Zima. I mean, I can't because no one's made a Zima in 20 years. But I actually think they do still make them somewhere in the world. But
I'm sure
what we're talking about today. For anybody who still hasn't tuned out,
everybody who's still listening.
I know. Hey, maybe Zima will sponsor us.
That'd be awesome. We could use sponsors. I really want sponsors. I am so jealous of people who have
I love
sponsors.
Zima, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't know if I made that
clear. Thanks, Steph. Anyway, today's topic is weird. Today's topic is fan casting with I said it with as a question, but not really. It's
a thing.
Yeah. Well, but it's a weird phenomenon that I noticed. Whenever somebody says we're going to make an adaptation of, and they insert pre-existing property here. So it could be a comic book, it could be a video game, it could be a novel, something with that already has a built-in fan base that you're just making to get people to go out. Then before they announce casting on anything, all the fans come out of the woodwork and they're like, oh, you know who should be in this? Like, so most recently they announced there's a new Batman movie filming and people were like, yes, Batman should be. And they named all these people. And then inevitably what happens is the casting does come up and they say, and the new Batman is Robert Pattinson. And everybody goes, the guy from Twilight, boo, boo. And they get really mad because there's no good reason. It's just that somebody decided like, oh, Batman should be this guy in my head. And then they don't pick the guy in your head. So now you're mad. And that's and I think that's the most recent one. I don't think that's the craziest one. I have this theory that no one has ever liked anybody who was ever cast as Batman until after it came out.
Until after. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Michael Keaton, they were like sending death threats to Warner Brothers. They were like, oh no, Mr. Mom, he can't play Batman. He's got no chin. Like that was an actual thing that people were complaining about back in the 90s.
Losing their minds.
Yeah, and it was like, no, he'll be fine. He's turns out he's a talented actor.
He can act a chin.
Yeah. But the same thing happened. The same thing happened with Christian Bale. The same thing happened with all the replacement Batmen in the Tim Burton and Schumacher franchise. It happened with Ben Affleck, and now it's happening with Robert Pattinson. People do not want him to play Batman. What
about Val Kilmer?
Val Kilmer, people knew can't be thinking.
Oh,
it's like,
I thought he'd be like perfect.
I thought he was great. I mean, the movie's horrible.
Yeah,
but he's fine.
Yeah.
He's not as good as Keaton. I liked a lot, but anyway, that's not. Yeah, but actually, that is part of what we're going to talk about. Because I'm wondering what makes when somebody says we're going to cast this movie, we're going to cast a movie version of this property that you really like. What's a book that you really like, Steph? That you'd like to see made into a movie?
Wuthering Heights.
Sure. Do you like Wuthering Heights?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a big fan of Wuthering Heights.
Well,
Who should play Heathcliff? Who should play Catherine?
Ooh, actually, I have not thought about that. Maybe Benicio del Toro for Heathcliff.
And Catherine?
Catherine, maybe a young Catherine Zeta-Jones, maybe.
I don't think you can get that back, but okay. So you've got an idea in your head. And
now I do.
Now, if they make a movie and those people aren't in it, will you get mad?
Now I will, yes.
Well, some people really do. Some people get really, really upset, and I don't understand it.
One of the things I want to ask here, you brought some of this up in the call for comments. Like, where did this start? Because I pinpoint some of this. Wizard Magazine you brought up in the blog.
Yes.
And that's probably not where it started. I think that's the first place I was really aware of it because they did it every issue.
Mm-hmm. For non-comic book fans, Wizard Magazine was the internet existed, but it wasn't a thing that everybody had yet. There was no websites. And Wizard Magazine was basically, it was for its day, it was a magazine that was essentially comicbook.com or Comic Shop News or any of those websites that people visit for fan rumors today. And it had interviews with creators. There was no Twitter. So if you want to know what whoever was writing, what John Byrne's drawing X-Men right now, Chris Claremont's writing it. You want to know what Claremont and Byrne are thinking, you go to Wizard Magazine and they've probably been interviewed. And then there'd be little columns in it. And every week there was something like, or every month rather, there was something like, let's cast, if they make a movie about Superman, here's who should be the new Superman. If they make a movie about Batman, here's who should be the new Batman. And then like early on, they did this thing. Who'd be great if they made a movie about X-Men? They should cast Patrick Stewart. And the reason they said that was because he was a bald guy who was on Star Trek.
Yeah, that was their primary reason for it.
Yeah, he was a bald guy.
Only bald actor in the geek community that anybody knew
at the time.
If
And
it had
then,
been 1964, that has said Yul Brynner.
Sure.
Yep.
and then when they make the movie, Bryan Singer's like, yeah, let's go after Patrick Stewart. And Patrick Stewart says, no, I don't want to do. I just finished doing Star Trek. I don't want to do another geek thing. I'll be typecast. But they kept pursuing him, and he eventually said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And he's awesome. He's great at playing Professor X. But most of the time, it doesn't work out. Most of the time, they don't cast the person that they say that the fan community wants, and people get like super pissed. And right now, I showed in the image, like a lot of people, and I've seen this a lot. People want there to be a Green Lantern movie, and they want Idris Elba to star as John Stewart, the Green Lantern, because Idris Elba is the most famous black man in the world. So that's the guy that everybody picks. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a great actor, and he's incredibly good looking. And if they decide to make a Green Lantern movie and they don't pick Idris Elba, or if Idris Elba says no because he's like, I don't want to be in a really bad DC Comics movie, because most of them have been, like people are going to be mad.
Yeah.
I mean, all I can think of when I hear talk of the Green Lantern movie is my feelings about the undeserved hate for Hal Jordan. So, like, I understand. I watched Justice League, the cartoon, and Justice League Unlimited. Mm-hmm. So I get the John Stewart love, but I was always more of like a Kyle Rayner and Hal Jordan guy, and less of a Guy Gardner, John Stewart guy. So that's all I can think about. So
well, there's a bunch of comic book ones. Those are easy because comic book movies are everything right now. The other one I mentioned that online was everybody, and this is one where the fans got what they wanted. They got Sophie Turner as Jean Grey in the rebooted X-Men movies.
Because she's a redhead.
Yeah,
or at least
but
they
she's
thought
not.
she was.
Yeah, she
thought she was.
Yeah, she's Sansa Stark from Game of Thrones, and she's a redhead on that. But the actress is actually blonde. She had just dyed her hair for this role, and people were like, "Oh, she's a redhead. Make her Jean Grey." She's horrible. Those movies are really bad. So it's not just her.
Horrible? Is she horrible, or were the movies horrible?
Yeah, well, she's horrible in those movies. She's a good actress. Those movies are bad, and so she's bad in them because they're just unsavable. They're really there's nothing there. So like people
are looking at very, very surface features.
I think it's usually skin and hair color.
Yep.
Skin, hair color, gender.
Yeah. Literal surface features.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, there's also so much of this comes out of the geek community, and they're only aware of actors who have been in other geek properties they've watched.
Yeah. I mean, that's a problem in general. It's the same thing as when I talked about my problem with people thinking, oh, we have to go, what we want there to be a black Superman because that will work. There should be a black gay Superman that way because they don't make enough movies about like gay people who are black. And I'm like, they made Moonlight. It won Best Picture. Just
you didn't go see it because
it didn't have superheroes and explosions in it. So, but like that's exactly true. Like geeks tend to cast people who have been in other geek movies. And but I don't think it's specific to just that. There were people, the 50 Shades of Grey community got real upset in the casting of Christian for 50 Shades of Grey. They did not like him. and I know that seems weird to a geek community, but like 50 Shades of Grey has
why didn't they like him?
Hashtag not my Christian. They'd cast another guy first that everybody. It was a thing. They'd cast the guy from Sons of Anarchy. I can't remember the actor's name. And
Charlie Hunnam. Charlie Hunnam.
Yes. And then he was busy. Like it conflicted with like the Sons of Anarchy filming. So he bowed out, and they got the new guy, and the fans like revolted. And to be fair, I mean, this is weird because I know from previous experience that like no one else has seen these films but me. But he and Dakota Johnson have no chemistry together. Like you look at those two people. I mean, they're both very pretty. They're both very attractive actors. But you look at them in a scene, and like if you spend more than 5 seconds watching the scene, you'll go, "There's no way you two people have fucked." No, there's just no. This just I don't want to see it. I don't believe it. I don't believe you like each other in the slightest. But yeah, so if you see a scene with Dakota Johnson and Jamie Dornan in the film for like more than 10 seconds, you'll go, there's no way they fucked each other. Like they do not look like they get along.
Do they not like each other in real life?
They say they're fine. They just don't have any chemistry together whatsoever. They are so bland together and like, you're just like two good looking people and they're just not interested in each other.
Maybe he wasn't her Christian either.
Yeah. And it really doesn't work. Now, again, also, they're bad movies. So that also hurts it. But, and it's very not sexy. But they're objectively good looking. So it's not just the geek community. It's just it's this thing where, we've talked about headcanon before. I think people get something so wrapped up in their heads and they want, like once you
it's that taking ownership of something. Like you read something, you have, particularly I think in a book, I mean, you're talking about Wuthering Heights, a well-written book, you have such a definitive image of these characters in your head that if it doesn't match that, then just it's wrong. And that happens even in books where the author doesn't really describe the characters in great detail, but you still have that. And particularly if it's something you really love, anything that just doesn't look like your headcanon things in your head just is wrong, and you're not going to get over that.
I mean, that's part of it, I guess. I wonder, I mean, again, Steph, you're a psychologist, like psychologically, we've talked about this before, like when we were talking about with like, you posted about this to Facebook today, actually, where people don't like people have a trouble looking past the notions they already have. Preconceived notions, like you have an idea, bias kind of thing. Yeah, you have an idea, and so anything that doesn't match that idea that you already have is obviously wrong and must be attacked. You were talking about in regards to like politics, but you were talking about like the idea that people, like once they have an idea of what something is in their head, it's hard to map that to something else.
Oh, yes. So I guess for me, like it's hard to like what. If you have an idea of something in your head, okay, then
use the example you used online, for instance.
Okay, well, so Mav's referring to a post that I just had a thought today, kind of based on someone else's post on Facebook, where I was thinking about why are people so, like some people so almost afraid, like there's some like visceral emotional reaction to the word socialism or socialist or Bernie Sanders, any kind of association. And someone mentioned that, older people have are less inclined to be supportive of Bernie and socialism in general. So then we're thinking someone mentioned that, they're in the 50s, I guess mostly in the 50s, they had the duck and cover drills in school where you're constantly under fear of a nuclear attack by the Soviet Union, and it's the United Soviet Socialist Republic. Thank you. So the point is that socialist is in the term Soviet Union, and you associate socialism with nuclear war and
with communism, and therefore with nuclear war, even though neither socialism nor communism necessarily means what. Like what you mean when you hear the word, or what people who are afraid of the word socialism are really afraid of is the pinkos. They're afraid of the bad guys, nebulously, whatever that means.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure that's associated with the fear of nuclear war. And they've been painted as, the evil empire.
Yeah, they're the commies. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of one.
The Red Scare.
I'm going to try to get back to your actual question, but that kind of made me also wonder whether people in the Soviet Union at the time had like a similar fear of the term capitalist.
Yes.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. So
very much so.
That answers that question.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it today, to move beyond that, it's the things where in the Middle East, the fear of like they hate us because everything to do with Americans is just we're evil. It's an association with the identity rather than the what the concepts actually mean of capitalism.
Okay, just basically a very simple association.
Demonization is what we would call it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I guess I would classify this along the dimension of whether. So you've read a book and you've in your mind pictured what you think these characters look like and who they are and all that. So I guess to me, maybe there's a difference between whether the actor who plays the role, whether you know that person like, and you know things about them, maybe in their personal life that are like conflict with like their personalities, maybe not what you think the character's personality should be, versus if you know nothing about the actor, actress, and all you know is they don't look like the person that you expect them to be. Mm-hmm. I guess to me, it seems really stupid. if it's just the second case, they look a little different, but they're basically can take on the persona of the person that's, is described, and you've understood the person to be, if you've, depending on your interpretation.
So going back, Wayne, you'll remember this, going back, and no one's going to remember this, but there was a point when people did not like that Charlie Cox was cast as Daredevil.
Yeah.
Charlie Cox has brown hair and Matt Murdock is a redhead.
Maybe geeks are like different.
And now
differently.
Well, no, I think that, but I think that's the thing.
Sorry.
Like, Charlie Cox wasn't famous. He was nobody at the time.
Yeah. And some of that is, Daredevil as Matt Murdock, for the people who care. I mean, he's been around as a redhead in their imagination and in the comics
for 50 years.
50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that definitely plays a part. Yeah, that plays a part. There is such a distinct image of who that character is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for people to see anybody else.
And then he went out there and he was, and he is arguably in any superhero television show of all time, he put on one of the best performances in the history of.
And he just dyed his hair.
No,
I assume he didn't.
No, he's just brunette.
No. Oh, he's just brunette. Unlike the kid who plays Archie on the best show on television, Riverdale.
Yes, yeah,
second best.
He has dyed his hair. No, it's the best.
Good place and soft television. She said "Good Life." I just want to point that out.
I meant Good Place.
Stephanie didn't even finish watching Good Place.
I did.
Okay, you did now?
I think so.
I don't think you did.
It just kind of fell apart.
Yeah, but that actor did dye his hair because Archie is. Yeah, he is so. You're not Archie if you don't have red hair. Period.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you think geeks, nerds, all the fandom communities, like I speak mainly as a comic book fan here. Do you think that they have a really, this is more of a rhetorical question. I think they have a really short memory because they start idealizing who would be the best person to play whoever. And I think they end up forgetting that some of the best choices for the heroes that, for the actors who've played the heroes they love, a lot of them have been unknowns. You have someone like Christopher Reeve. You had, the people you don't expect to be good, like Michael Keaton. I remember when
the problem is
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, people were very good.
The fan community doesn't bother casting those people because they're unknown,
or they're known for the wrong thing. So to the two geeks, like to pick the new Batman, two geeks, Robert Pattinson is the guy from Twilight, that movie that they've never seen, but they hate it because they know it's girl stuff.
Right.
But like if you hate Twilight and you've seen Twilight, fine. But I've seen Twilight. It's fine. It's not my thing because when I watched it, I was like, I don't know, whenever it came out, I was like 35, 40, whatever years old. And I was a grown man, not a 12-year-old girl that the movie was made for. And but I was able to watch it and go, if I was a 12-year-old girl, I see how I'd be into this. Like, this is a bunch of dreamy.
That was my review of the book.
When
it first came out. Before it became a thing, I was paid to review the book. And
and it's just like
my review is, if I was a 12-year-old girl, this would be the best book I ever read.
Yeah.
Hey, wow, spot on.
Yeah, and it is. It's exactly the kind of wish fulfillment fantasy that you're about. Now, we've talked about Twilight on this show before. People have problems with it, and rightly so, because it relies in many ways on a lot of very outdated gendered stereotypes based on proper girlhood behavior for a good Christian girl. It really is very much it is the, and by outdated, I mean the kind that, like, other than the most stringent churches, even very evangelical people don't follow today. There's a lot of not just save yourself for marriage, but there's a lot of just letting boys come and do everything for you in it. They're very outdated stereotypes. The exact kinds of wish fulfillment fairy tale stereotypes that you might be into if you were a 12-year-old girl.
Oh my God. I'd never read any of the books or watched the movies, but I know someone who's my age, and believe me, they're much past the 16-year-old mark, who is like way too into.
But I think that's the thing. Like, I think that same thing's happening here. You are looking at it. They're probably reading it, even though they're reading it not now. There's probably a great deal of nostalgia for it because it's this fantasy. It's literally a fantasy about being. Here's what the story of Twilight is. You are the wallflower girl in school, and the cutest two boys in school. You know, the athletic boy and the gothy, dangerous looking boy both have massive crushes on you. And by the way, they also both have superpowers. And so you're the most important person in the universe. That's the whole story. Like it's literally about the werewolf boy and the vampire boy both wanting to be your boyfriend, and you're just a normal girl. And oh my God, who do I pick? So for people who enjoy that book, it works. And for people who have never seen those books, seen those movies or read those books, which is most of the people who are complaining about Robert Pattinson, they've never seen it. It's just their association with him is he can't be Batman because he's the sparkly vampire. Pattinson's done like 40 independent films since he is a phenomenal actor. He is he shouldn't be Batman, quite frankly, because he's way too good an actor to be Batman. He is so out of their league.
Much like Twilight, they haven't seen those movies either.
Right. He made a bunch of money making these movies that he says are stupid kid movies. He knows they're bad. And then Kristen Stewart went on to sort of make a whole bunch of movies. She's actually choosy. She's a really good actress too, but she went on to do a bunch of stuff in the public eye. And Pattinson's I'm going to do Cannes Film Festival books.
She's in Pittsburgh right now, or at least was last week.
Oh, you should meet up with her again.
Yeah, I'm in a movie with her. I'm in a movie at Adventureland with her. I'm sure she remembers me very well.
I'm sure.
from my job of standing behind her for a day. So I think that people associate him with this concept of he's Edward the Sparkly Vampire, and I don't like that because it's a girl's book, and so they don't want him to be Batman. But it's not based on anything other than that. His hair's the right color, and again, he's a great actor. They just never seen him in anything. So the other one, Brooklyn, who's been a guest on our show many times, she commented on the blog, on the call for comments, saying that she thinks that one of the best examples of casting ever was Heath Ledger as the Joker, and nobody wanted that because he wasn't Jack Nicholson. Like that's basically when they announced Pretty Boy Heath Ledger as the Joker.
So that was right off of Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah. Which none of the geeks saw. The last thing they'd seen him in was the Night movie.
Oh
shit!
A Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale. Yes, that was the last thing any of them had seen him in. And or maybe 10 Things I Hate About You. He'd done these goofy kid romances, and then he did Brokeback Mountain, which was the gay movie, and now he's the Joker. And he's like, I don't want to see that. He's great. Everybody loves Heath Ledger as the Joker. Yeah. The role killed him, but he was great in it.
Didn't he win an Oscar for that?
Yes, he did.
Posthumously, right? Posthumously. However that word is said. Yep. So Heath Ledger's an interesting case because I was skeptical of Heath Ledger because of the whole 10 Things I Hate About You factor. But you know who I was psyched about when I heard that they were cast as the Joker was Jared Leto. Before.
Turns out that was a mistake.
Yeah, that did not go well.
I wonder how much it has to do with who played the role previously. I mean, you kind of mentioned that.
I think in some cases, a lot. I think that in the cases of Batman and the Joker in particular, anything, those characters are so iconic, and those movies are, even the bad ones, are guaranteed to do so well that I think they're so popular that it's hard to not have your association with whoever the last person to do the role was. And I think that Jack Nicholson just sort of owned that role for years. And then Heath Ledger did for years.
Can't forget Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill.
Well, yeah. But Mark Hamill, only if you know it, huh?
I did not realize he played the Joker.
He plays the voice of the Joker in the cartoon and the video games for longer than anybody else. Something like 20 years. He just stopped doing it a couple years ago.
His voice is marvelous.
Yes. Yeah. But people get so associated with the idea of whatever whoever they see in that role just becomes their real Joker and their real Batman. And I think Batman and the Joker are characters on another level because every kid over the age of 2 knows who Batman and the Joker are in a way that maybe you don't know who Heathcliff is from Wuthering Heights. So I think everybody has this idea of that. And until another Joker comes along and is better, like, I think now we're like, I don't think Leto managed to do that. He didn't knock it out of the park. That movie wasn't great. And even for people who like that movie or who like parts of that movie, the one thing that pretty much everybody thought was bad was him. His performance was awful in that film. And so wait a couple of years and then all of a sudden you have Joaquin Phoenix and now he's just the Joker to everybody. Like, that's how it works. Yep. And I think that that's special, but I think that there are other things where it's just sort of you get the idea in your head and it's not even necessarily something where you're even associating it with. It's just that everybody is so sure that's the right way to go that people get mad when it doesn't match up. Like, if the fans wanted, well, here's one. I use this example on the blog. And Wayne, you've heard me tell the story because I got really upset. I actually did a PCA paper about it a couple of years ago about when they made the Iron Fist TV show. And you might hate the Iron Fist. There's legitimate reasons to feel like the Iron Fist TV show is, cultural appropriation or whatever. There's legitimate reasons to think it's bad. And of those 4 Netflix shows, it is the worst one. I think it's objectively the worst of those four superhero shows.
If it had come out in 1980, it would have been the greatest
superhero show on television
in the history of forever.
It literally, when Iron Fist premiered, it was the 4th best of the networks of the 4 Netflix Marvel Universe shows, which made it the 4th best superhero show ever in the history of television. And it was, and there's superhero shows that I love. I like Smallville. I like the original Incredible Hulk show.
Me too.
You know what? Yeah. Iron Fist was better than the original Incredible Hulk show. And if you don't think so, you haven't watched it in a few years.
I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it's very of its time. And Iron Fist was very of its time. But when they announced Iron Fist, before they cast anybody, they announced Iron Fist, and the internet got in its mind that, Iron Fist is a story about cultural appropriation. True, it is. It's a story about a white savior. And so the internet decided we can fix this. They should cast an Asian guy as Iron Fist, and then that problem goes away. And then I was the one super liberal guy on the internet agreeing with all the incels on the internet going, no, that's stupid. And they were saying, no, he's got to be a white guy. It's like, I agree he's got to be a white guy because Iron Fist is a story of a white guy appropriating Asian culture.
Can we talk about the irony of wanting the Kung Fu character to be Asian?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And I was like,
it was a no-win casting situation.
It was a no-win casting, and I was like, Iron Fist is the story of a white guy appropriating Asian culture. If you don't want that story, then the answer is you don't want an Iron Fist TV show, which is an okay thing to want.
Yeah,
what you want
Shang-Chi.
is Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, which they're making a movie of now. And again, Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu is the exact concept as Iron Fist. I know because I read them both as a kid. Yeah. But Shang-Chi wasn't being published at that point, so nobody knew it because he hadn't had a book in comic book fans notoriously have a memory of 5 years. That's it. And he hadn't had a book in over 5 years, so nobody remembered him. But Shang-Chi has the same powers as Iron Fist. He's effectively the same character. He's got a similar mission and origin. He's just Asian instead of white. He actually predates Iron Fist by a year. His character came out first. So I was like, you want this thing, not Iron Fist. And that's a fine thing to want. I want a Shang-Chi movie. I can't wait for the Shang-Chi movie that's coming out. So then people got upset when they cast Finn Jones as Iron Fist because they're like, oh, just another white boy in a movie. We don't need another white superhero. And it's like, they were mad at Marvel. They were mad at Netflix. Marvel never promised you an Asian Iron Fist. They were mad at him the day casting was announced. They hadn't seen a frame of footage because not one frame had been shot. Now, was he great in the role? No, he was fine. He was.
Maybe he was.
Okay, so here's the thing. People complained about it. Do you know what was on the air the same time as Iron Fist? The Inhumans. The Inhumans TV show was on the air the same time as Iron Fist. If you've seen the Inhumans and you think that Iron Fist was the worst show on the air at that time, then you don't get to have an intelligent conversation. The Inhumans was far worse. It was a horrible television show. From concept to visual design to acting. It was awful. It was
so
really
this
bad.
is kind of like the reverse of the usual situation where people so are these people who have read the comic book and know that he's a Caucasian and
Yes.
okay, this is the reverse situation.
They decided they decided that they could make up for whitewashing of other characters by Asian washing Iron Fist. And then Marvel didn't do it because had they done it, they would have been accused of pandering to a stereotype of converting a kung fu character to an Asian character.
Right. But it was core to the story that he wasn't
white. That he was white. Yeah, it's part of the story. Is that he's white. He's a white guy who gets dumped into a mystical Asian land and then rises to become their greatest warrior. It's a problematic story.
Yeah, that is kind of racist.
It's extremely racist.
Yeah.
That's the story. And by the way, the thing that I liked about Iron Fist is that the show was aware of it. And the show very much pointed out that he just thought he was the greatest. Danny gets his ass kicked constantly on that show.
Yeah.
like he gets and he's not very good at it. And he's like constantly dressed down by other characters. They are aware of it and they tried their best. It's not no. Did it deserve an Emmy? No, I'm not saying that, but people were mad because Marvel didn't go the way that the internet had just decided they should go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's a problem too. Or to look the other way, Ancient One and Doctor Strange. Ancient One, in the comics is this stereotypical, frankly, extremely racist for 2020, kind of racist for 1966 when it came out. He's a little Asian man who does magic mastery. He's a little Asian wizard man with squinty eyes and crooked back and a long beard, and he's the Ancient One. He has no name. And Marvel, when they made the Doctor Strange movie, said, "This is pretty damn racist. Okay, how do we fix this?" So so they fixed it by casting Tilda Swinton in the role. They just called her the Ancient One, and she's not Asian in it. She's not an old man.
She's Irish.
Yeah, she's
something-ish.
Yeah, she's
Tilda
Swinton.
Swinton. So
Australian, I think.
At least you have some.
She doesn't talk in funny riddles like the Ancient One. Like she's just a woman. They shaved her head bald to make her look weird. And she's essentially Tilda Swinton being, like she's weird, but only in as much as Tilda Swinton is always weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. She's beyond human almost.
Yes. And I liked her in the role, but people complained about it. It's like, well, she took a role away from an Asian actor. And I'm like, if you made a comic book accurate Ancient One, that would be bad.
Yeah.
Because the character in the comics is a very outdated stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
It's about as cliche as you can get.
Orientalism 101.
Yeah, and it was pretty offensive when they came up with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no right answer there either. I don't know. Like, I don't know how they could have fixed that. I understand why people get mad when a role's whitewashed, but what do you do there?
Yeah. So basically you can't win, really.
Not there.
Yeah.
Well, you could.
When you're casting roles that were racist to begin with, what do you do now?
I mean, they did Wong and they just made him cool because Wong was another character in the same book. Wong is Doctor Strange's sidekick and he's an Asian man and they just made him cool instead of lame. But he was never uncool in the comics. He was like his butler and they said, well, you're not his butler anymore. Now you're more his partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Wong is essentially his Alfred. Yeah. In the books.
And in the comics, he's just like his partner. I mean, the movies, he's just his partner. And it's just like, okay, Wong's there now. Yeah. Let's not worry about it. Mm-hmm. So there's things you can do about it. I mentioned the Shang-Chi movie. When they announced that they were casting the Shang-Chi movie, suddenly people got excited about it who weren't me. And everybody and I saw like all these fan casting things and people were like, who it should be? It should be. And at the top of every list was Steven Yeun, who you don't know. You don't know who he is.
I do. Yeah.
No. Yeah. He's Glenn from The Walking Dead.
The only Asian person in geek culture they know.
Yeah. He's the Asian guy he's the Asian guy geeks know because he's the Asian guy on Walking Dead. That's it. The other person I saw everybody say was, what about Jackie Chan? And Jackie Chan did look like Shang-Chi 40 years ago. but Jackie Chan's like a 70-year-old man now. He's like 68 or something. He's like really old. He can't be Shang-Chi. So people were saying it should be Jackie Chan or it should be Steven Yeun, and they didn't cast him. They cast Simu Liu. Yeah, you don't know who he is. Nobody knows who he is. He had such versatile roles as the guy standing over there in Pacific Rim. He's
that guy, yeah.
He's also he's the hot dog vendor on one episode of Fresh Off the Boat. He's nobody.
Are you looking him up on IMDb?
No, I've got his picture right there.
Okay.
He's a good-looking guy.
Yeah,
he's nobody right now until the movie comes out.
Yeah, and he's going to be massive. This movie's going to make a bunch of money. He is a really good-looking Asian dude, and good for him. He needs the break. They probably got him pretty cheap, and he's going to be. And he looks like a martial artist.
Yeah, maybe I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention. Has there been a lot of backlash on casting for the Eternals? Because you mentioned the Walking Dead thing. I'm blanking on the actress's name. She plays Connie. She's a black woman who is deaf, and she's been cast to play Makari, who is a white dude.
In the books, yeah. I've heard people complain. I've heard a few complaints, but I think that the Eternals is relatively insulated because nobody knows who those characters to even know who they are.
You're right. Nobody knows who those characters are. Yeah, which was kind of the point I was wanting to make there. Is it nobody cares because no one knows who those characters are? I think so. They don't have those associations.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering about, I know I don't really watch a lot of soap operas myself, but like Mav does, or at least you used to.
I don't know what you're implying.
Oh, well, we were just talking about Zimas a moment ago. But.
Well, look.
Nice callback.
And it's not that it's, I'm just saying that
you don't have to be defensive. It's okay.
Sometimes one gets very invested in the story of Bo and Hope because if Stefano gets in the way and he could, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
I was a General Hospital nerd for years, so
okay, good.
It's okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, the difference between, like, in soap operas, they often replace characters with different actors.
Yes.
And so I was just wondering if there was kind of like a similar kind of.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Soap opera fans are.
I would tell you, I was just wondering about the audience. There are probably very different audiences. Except for Mav.
No, to my experience, soap opera fans are more forgiving. Long as the new person is good, they will give it. It happens so frequently that they'll give them a chance. Now I've seen, like, I remember when Kirsten Storm, who played Belle Black on Days of Our Lives for many, many years, she left and they replaced her with this woman. I can't remember her name. I want to say it was like Charity something. So another blonde. Like they basically replaced the actress. And the new actress was there.
Well, they had the same hair color you were saying.
Yes, they had the same hair color. They were both blonde teenagers, or 20-ish. Because she'd been the original. She wasn't the original actress. There was a character who played it as a baby, but this girl had played the role from like age 13 to like age 19 or 20. So she had like 6-7 years on the show. Mm-hmm. And then they replaced her with another 20-year-old, 20-something when she left for other roles. It's like not like she was fired. She's just like, I don't want to re-sign my contract. And so they replaced her with this other actress. And the new woman sucked. Oh. She was real bad. Like just
a bad actress.
Yeah. I can't even remember. Or I've never seen her in anything else, but she would read lines like this. And yes. No, I am in love with you, Sean. And it was bad. Mm-hmm. And she lasted like 2 weeks and they recast it again. She was like, it was stilted and awful. And I don't know how, I'll never forget that because I remember seeing interviews in the press with other performers on the show saying, yeah, the less we talk about her, the better.
Yeah, I think with soap operas, there's also the whole you see these characters 5 hours a week, 5 days a week. So after 2 weeks, you've seen this person. They become that character because you associate it because they're doing it. Whereas in a movie, you got 2 hours.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And just for the record,
the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, right. Which is now however many hours. Just for the record, the actress who plays Connie on Walking Dead is Lauren Ridloff.
Okay. So. Yeah. So, that's a good question, though, because I think soap operas do give you a little more leeway. And I think that there are, people do settle into there were people who were against Hugh Jackman as Wolverine because the internet had decided that it should be Glenn Danzig.
Mm-hmm.
They just decided that, but long before the movie ever came out.
And Glenn Danzig doesn't act and probably had no interest in the role.
No, he actually
Wait,
was.
you're talking about the musician?
Yes.
Yeah.
He actually was interested in the role. It just didn't work out. He's not an actor. But he's a dude that looks kind of like, he's kind of a scruffy looking dude.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're like, he should be Wolverine. And he's like, okay. And then they're like, no. So they
and Hugh Jackman is 6'6", and everybody's like, Wolverine's only 5'5", and
really, he's that tall? I didn't realize.
Oh yeah, Hugh Jackman's huge.
Yeah,
and Wolverine is supposed to be ever so slightly too tall to be a dwarf. He's like 5'4", 5'5" in the comics. He is a short man.
Interesting.
And Hugh Jackman was great in the role, and now it's going to be really hard to replace him because it's just the one thing that everybody associates as universally good in that entire franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Did he retire? Was it his choice to retire?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's an old man. Yeah. He's an old man who's literally eaten nothing but chicken for the last 25 years. He's done. It's just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Put his time in.
It's just because he's talked about it. He's just like, he's made so many of these movies, and he started in 1998 and he made them till 2019 or 2018. And he's just like, you have no idea what I have to go through in order to be.
Yeah. And he went through cancer and everything, and he had to maintain all that muscle mass.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm done. I just don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. He's like, I love the character, but kill me.
I want a pot belly now.
It's like, I would like to get fat. Yeah. And I just understand it. I understand it. But but people were against him. The one that I talked about on the blog, we had Gal Gadot, who people complained about. Yeah. And part of that was Ronda Rousey was actively campaigning for the role at the time because she is like, Wonder Woman should be tough. And she sort of played into sort of the Wonder Woman shouldn't have to be a pretty girl, which is, Wonder Woman has frequently been portrayed as a sex symbol in the comics rather than, more than anything else. Mm-hmm. But Wonder Woman, she's supposed to be a warrior. She should look tough. She should be somebody who can fight like me. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Gal Gadot was special forces in the Israeli military, but she didn't know that. And the problem with Ronda Rousey is Ronda Rousey can't, what's the word I'm looking for here? Act. She's really bad. She's gotten better and she's still not good. She's okay. She's an excellent fighter, and she's gotten better from her time with WWE wrestling, helped her a lot. But I've seen her in the Fast and the Furious movies, which Gal Gadot is also in. And Ronda Rousey is clearly not up to the acting chops that one needs to be in a Fast and Furious movie.
Mm-hmm. let alone carry the title
of Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Steph, you remember when she hosted Saturday Night Live?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. She was the host of Saturday Night Live. In between all the sketches combined, she maybe had 15 lines. Read horribly off of cue cards. She just mostly stood around because they're just like, no, this is not working. She's just not good at it. It's not her skill. And I think she understands that now. She's working to be better, but it's not. But you're not carrying this franchise. And, you don't need to really look tough. And by the way, again, she is tougher. She's just petite. You need to be able to act. First and foremost thing that you need to do in order to be an actor. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it didn't really bother me, Gal Gadot playing Wonder Woman, because my Wonder Woman was Linda Carter. Uh-huh. Yeah, who basically they have almost the same body type.
Linda Carter at the same age was skinnier.
Skinnier? Okay.
I show their modeling pictures in my comic book class when we talk about that, about the assumptions people made about her. But yeah, they're very similar body types at the same age.
In my mind, for some reason, Linda Carter seems bigger, broader shoulders or something, but not much different.
Yeah, it's a different costume and different, and I think she bulked up a little bit for the role, but yeah, it's a different.
Yeah, I think that 70s costume, that was the bare shoulder thing. So there was just
just made it.
Okay, made her look more.
She has and also Linda Carter has a tiny waist. She is super skinny around the waist, so it makes her look hourglassy.
Yeah.
An exceptional. I don't know what her measurements are, but if you actually look at a picture of her in the costume, she has a tiny waist, so it makes her shoulders look even broader. I wanted to point out one more, definitely, which was that I just had, in the superheroes, and we should go into some other categories. But another big one that I thought of was Brie Larson, and this was just because this is when it's not even about what she looks like. Brie Larson, I see a lot of people constantly. I've as I say frequently in the show, I read a lot of dark corners of the internet for my job of people who are not necessarily the kindest to women and do not read the comments online. I do it so you don't have to, as I say. And there are people who don't like Brie Larson. And really, it's because she is an outspoken feminist. That's the reason. Huh. It's not has nothing to do with what she looks like. They say she's ugly. She's too ugly and she can't act. And she hates men. Now, Brie Larson's not ugly.
No.
I maintain that if a person who looks like Brie Larson walks up to anybody who posts this and says, I would like to have sex with you now, please fuck me, not one of them is going to say no. Not one. So I maintain that.
And I feel
second, Brie Larson absolutely can act. Brie Larson won Best Actress the year before she starred as Captain Marvel for starring in Room. Mm-hmm. She is a delight. They are lucky to have her. She's a phenomenal actress. And does she hate men?
None of those people saw that movie.
No, none of the people saw that movie. It's great. And they're like, well, she shouldn't be, she hates men. And and then the person who I posted a picture, they said the alternate castings that they had suggested for Captain Marvel were because they'd seen some Photoshop pictures, Ronda Rousey again and Natalie Dormer. They're like, Natalie Dormer would be great. And their rationalization for Natalie Dormer is that she had a shaved head at the side. She had the sides of her head shaved for her role in Hunger Games. Stuff's trying to figure out who she is.
No, I know who she is.
Yeah, she was in Game of Thrones for a while. She's blonde. There's she's a better actress. She's hotter and she doesn't hate men.
Then my reaction was for the ridiculous reason for them.
You don't know anything about Natalie Dormer. Natalie Dormer is an extremely outspoken feminist. All this tells me about you is that you haven't read a Natalie Dormer interview, because if you literally Google Natalie Dormer feminism, she writes a column. She does interview. Yeah. She talks about it all the time. And you certainly have never talked to Brie Larson. I've never. Sorry, you certainly have never talked to Ronda Rousey, who literally constantly talks about all the dudes that she's beat up. She's
So does this happen in other fandoms? I mean, you mentioned 50 Shades. You and I inhabit the world of comics fandom and that geek culture. Because I was thinking of casting, and I wasn't on message boards. I'm sure there had to have been some backlash. The Lee Child character, Jack Reacher, they've made 2 movies of that. And in the books, Jack Reacher is 6'6" and 250 pounds of solid muscle. And Tom Cruise plays him in the movie.
Who's 5 foot nothing.
Yeah, and I saw the first movie. I've read the book it's based on, and it told the story. But boy, did I not see the character I think of. It didn't take me out of the movie because it's a Tom Cruise movie.
I've never read the book, so
yeah, they're candy. I mean, they're fun. I've read a lot of them. They're fun and entertaining and kind of candy. The Reacher, he's an intriguing character for reasons beyond the scope of the show. But kind of the essence of his character is he's a big, strong monster of a man.
Mm-hmm. Well, how much does a character need to actually match the book? The Harry Potter play in England, we talked about it on our Harry Potter show. They cast a black woman, a British, an African British woman to play the role of Hermione. And people freaked out because Hermione Granger is supposed to be white, but the book doesn't say Hermione Granger's white. The book, the description of Hermione in the book is she has big teeth and curly hair, and then later she fixes her teeth. That's what it says. That's the only description that that Rowling ever gives of her. And so a lot of people who read that as kids said,
but the movie's codified what she looks like,
right? But they said, she's white. But also other people were like, she has frizzy hair, she's black. So if you grew up reading those books and you thought that she was black, then the woman they cast for the play looks way more like her than Emma Watson does. So
I just don't know if there was a kind of fan backlash to Jack Reacher as there is for because comics geeks are just
they don't like change.
They're my people.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, they're more rigid.
I have a
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a friend who, whenever a new superhero movie comes out, like with Civil War and a bunch of the Avengers and Marvel's Cinematic Universe movies, he didn't like them. Like, and he's a super big comic geek, but his big thing was he put so much expectation on these movies that when they adapted a storyline, they should stick almost verbatim to the comic, and he would complain about all the changes. And I don't think that's a fair. I think this is where we start getting into like toxic fan culture, because you realistically cannot condense 80 years worth of continuity into a movie. You can't.
The rules of cinema are different than the rules of graphic storytelling.
Well, and that's maybe something to do with it, Matt. You pointed out, say 80 years of storytelling, right? And you said you've got however many hours of content to like listen to read, and then we got 2 hours of a movie. But when you think about it, if you're talking about something like a comic, even more so than like if I read Hunger Games, and the story of Katniss Everdeen is 3 books long. It's, I don't know, 300 pages per book. It's 900 pages of my life is filled with Katniss Everdeen. I read all 3 books. Probably less, because they're probably under 300 pages each. So that's my picture of Katniss Everdeen in my head. And to the extent that I imagined her at all, you know what? Jennifer Lawrence, pretty much, that's okay.
She was fine. Yeah.
Now, if I'm talking about Superman, there are some 20,000 Superman adventures in my head, and Spider-Man adventures, and Wonder Woman adventures, and Batman adventures.
Drawn by a variety of artists who draw them very differently.
Because that's the odd thing, though, right? Like when people say, I've heard people complain about like, well, the problem with Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man is that he obviously looked like he was 30. And he did. He actually did look a little too old to be in high school when they made that movie. And Tom Holland looks, even though he was 20 at the time, he looks young. And so I believed him as a 15-year-old a lot better than I believed Tobey Maguire as a 15-year-old. But you know what? Frankly, Spider-Man was in high school for like 6 years of his run. The character's been around for 50 years, 40 years, almost 50 years. No,
I've read a lot of adult Spider-Man stories. Yeah,
it's been 50s. Yeah, because he's premiered in the 60s. So he's been around for more than 50 years. Yeah, and he was in high school for like 6 of them, or 5 or something. It's not that long, so it's fine. And John Romita Jr. draws Spider-Man differently than John Romita Sr. did. And differently than Ditko does, and differently than McFarlane does. They're not the same. Like, other than the fact that they always have brown hair, Spider-Man is a white guy with brown hair. Beyond that, like, anybody can be Peter Parker. The look is very different from artist to artist, because people have a different conception of what that character should look like. Same. I mean, there are key elements like, Like if you're talking about Wolverine, he tends to have pointy hair, usually, for most artists, less so for others. There's a distinct, there are like sort of characteristic elements that go into the character. But, there's a difference between the way that like somebody like Alex Ross, who paints, from
realistic people.
Photorealism draws, versus the way John Byrne, who's like very much a classic comic artist, draws. Versus the way I'm trying to think of Bruce Timm, who's extremely simplified Art Deco.
And you would think that all those different looks would allow the fan base to accept different faces in that role. But boy, they get really attached to that stuff.
I'm not going
That's kind of interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering if. Oh, sorry. I was wondering like if comic book fans tend to like have the same reaction when there's a different artist and different portrayal and print of character.
I think less so than they used to. I mean, there was a time back in the day when an artist left a book, people would leave the book. They would follow the artist somewhere else, as it wasn't the character, it was the artist. And I think at this point, there have been so many artists, very few artists are on a book now for any length of time to establish themselves as the look of that character.
2 years, Marvel and DC. 2 years is a long, 2 years in the big two companies. 2 years, which, assuming you come out every month, which is not a guarantee.
Yeah.
But if you are on a book for 24 straight issues, that's a long time in the modern world.
And that wasn't true. Like Jack Kirby did 100 issues of Fantastic Four, So back in the day,
while doing other books.
While doing other books, right?
Do you think? Sorry, Wayne.
No, I was just going to finish that up. Just people associated a specific artist with a specific character in the 1960s in a way I don't think happens anymore.
Although,
no, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, no, my fault. Don't you think some of it depends on the quality of the run too, right? Like it's not just the artist, but it's like artist plus writer in terms of like the quality of the run. So like someone like when Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley were doing Ultimate Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, that was a very long run. Yes.
Yeah, and then Bagley, of course, did
they clicked with the fans and they established something that I think people got invested in. The team of Bagley and I forgot the artist's name.
Bendis and Bagley.
Bendis. The team of Bendis and Bagley, people got invested in it in a way that, like, I'm trying to think. So I am currently reading the X-Men books because for Jonathan Hickman, who's writing them, has gotten me invested in them like I haven't been in decades, frankly.
Yeah.
That said, I don't know that I could tell you who's on which book as an artist.
Yeah.
Wayne, can you?
No.
I don't.
I've lost, and to be fair, I've been a little bit more out of touch with it in the last 3 months. But in general, I can tell. It's weird considering how much time I spend with comics. I don't identify artists and styles the way I used to.
Right. I can tell you that John Byrne drew the X-Men from the mid 70s through 1986.
Issue 107 through 142, 143.
I mean, I can, like, I know,
with a couple of fill-in issues,
right? Like I know that because that was a run that like used to happen. I can tell you. I mean, like I know that after him. I know that through the mid 200s, it was drawn by John Romita Jr. I know that from there was a few various people filling in until it eventually landed on Jim Lee and then Mark Silvestri. Like I know that.
Yeah,
but I can't tell you who's drawing it now, and I read it right now. It's not like that same thing doesn't happen. So it is weird that there is that kind of.
And the long history of these characters, there are so many different visions of them. That not my Batman kind of thing. People have this image, but in 1965, Adam West was perfect casting for Batman.
For what that character was at the time.
Yeah.
And of course I bet you there was a backlash against that because he was not known for doing he didn't have the body type that people expected. He was like this pot-bellied guy.
So anyway, we've resolved nothing.
No,
here's what I want to suggest before we end this, though. I want all of our listeners, all three of you, to
more than three people.
More than three. I want you to fan cast the regular host of Vox Popcast.
I want to know this.
Write in on the blog and tell us who you want playing each of our parts in Vox Popcast, the movie.
Ooh.
This could be dangerous.
Who plays Wayne? Who plays Mav? Who plays Hannah? Who
Chris
plays Katya?
Maverick should be played by Mark Bernardin.
And I will give $1 to anybody who cast one of the cast of Riverdale as Hannah.
Oh, that'd be great. That's not even, you know what? It's not even, it's Lily Reinhardt. Like I know, like we know Hannah. It's just like it's like I mean, go ahead and make an army for anybody else, but for anybody else.
Yes, there are probably other actresses who would be a much better choice, but I'm saying that just because I want her to yell at me next week.
But, you miss being yelled at by Hannah.
She was on last week. No, it's just I would be curious as to what people would do with that. Stephanie, are you going to write in and do this? Or are you prepared to do yours right now?
For you, yeah.
Oh, who plays?
I mean, I've had years to think about this.
Oh, go ahead.
Shit, I forget his the dude who plays Lando Calrissian.
Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
I'll take that. And I will also take
a young one.
Donald Glover.
No.
Are you kidding? Donald Glover does a perfect Billy D. Williams and therefore a perfect me.
Oh, no. That's a terrible, terrible choice.
Why? You don't like Donald Glover?
Not really, no.
How do you not? Everybody likes Donald Glover. How do you not like Donald Glover?
I'm the one person that doesn't like Donald Glover.
Wow. Suddenly reevaluating our entire relationship. Everybody
this
loves
is the straw.
Everybody loves Donald Glover.
Mav's going to be played by
okay.
Mav's going to be played by Samuel L. Jackson just because he's in everything.
Yeah,
Idris
that's
Elba.
true.
That would be Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. That's perfect casting. Okay, there you go. That's what I would like to end on. Steph?
Yes.
Who are the most perfect cast? What's the most perfect casting you can think of anything that's anybody who's been in anything where you're like, that's exact. I read the book, or I read the comic, or I watched the TV show and they remade it. Where's the one thing where you're like, that was awesome? That's exactly who you need for that role.
Like, okay, to be honest, this is why I'm not a good guest on this particular episode. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't care. I mean, as long as it's a good movie and you're like a good actor, then it's fine.
That is a good answer. I agree with you.
I don't have strong reactions to this stuff very much.
Mm-hmm. No. Is there anybody who you're like, oh wow, that person nailed the role, even if you didn't think about it just from the casting?
The Bohemian Rhapsody movie last year, there was a time when Sacha Baron Cohen was associated with that, and as a fan of Queen, I couldn't see that at all. That really bothered me. I like Rami Malek a lot. So,
he was going to play Freddie Mercury?
Yeah, he was trying to produce the film, and he wanted to star as Freddie Mercury.
Oh, I'm glad that he did not do that.
Yeah. That was one that just made me go, oh no. But
Rami Malek was exactly what that movie needed. Yeah. Let's see. I think Samuel L. Jackson, like you said, that to be fair, that version of Nick Fury was always drawn to look like Samuel L. Jackson, so it was just a gimme part.
There's a scene in the Ultimates where they're sitting around talking, and the Nick Fury in the Ultimates, they're having this conversation. Who should play me in a movie? And the Nick Fury character says, Sam Jackson, nobody else, And
he was already drawn to
happen.
Yeah, he was already drawn to look like Sam Jackson. So.
And there's still was probably some backlash.
Probably somewhere, but yeah, that one was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, well, people at home, you can write, leave us a comment, let us know what is perfect casting that you have seen, and also I really am curious to see who you would cast as each of us, like Wayne said, and of course,
I'm trying to think for Wayne. That's a hard one.
Tricky.
I'll think about it though.
Are you gonna leave? You're gonna leave a comment? Let us know.
If I think of something good, yeah.
Are you gonna cast somebody from Riverdale as Hannah to make Wayne give you $1?
No. I don't want to get in the middle of all that.
Well, thank you for joining us anyway, Stephanie.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Anything you want to plug this week?
Oh, not this week. No.
Matt, thank you I know you have something to plug, because I know you have a couple of new things to plug. But first, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Matt.
And anything you would like to plug? Knowing the answer.
Oh my God. Well, there's TheoCon.
What is TheoCon?
So
I'm sorry, TheoCon. I've not heard of that. What is that? I've been to TheoCon.
So TheoCon, think of it as Comic-Con, where you have all the panels and all that stuff, but smaller, much smaller. But panels that deal with the intersection of religion, philosophy, popular culture. So there's now like an open call for people who want to submit stuff or make a panel
which we need
or
to do
a podcast and have people sit in on a live session. So that's happening.
Stephanie's pointing at me going, you should do this. Yeah, I'm aware.
Just in case you weren't paying attention.
I always ask Mav to do things for me.
Yep.
And the good news, it's in Pittsburgh this year. So it's even closer.
How convenient.
Yeah, it's right there. So
yeah, I had a conflict last year. I had all intentions of going, and then something came up. I don't even remember what it was.
I think that was like the weekend you were like performing a wedding or something.
Yeah, there was a wedding that weekend. You're right.
And I think you were like officiating. And you're like, I
yes.
Go. I'm essential.
September 19th, Wayne. September 19th. We'll be looking for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to do this one.
Yeah. What else do you promoting anything else?
Sure. There's always the blog site, popularcultureandtheology.com. There's the book series, Theology and the Theology and Pop Culture series that unfortunately is by an academic publisher. So it's really, really overpriced. But if you want a 30% discount, I can get that for you for the Theology in Marvel, Theology in Prince, Theology in Westworld, which is available for pre-order. And a lot of other stuff coming down the pipeline. And I'm seeking book proposals for a religion and comic series I'm doing with A. David Lewis, who does stuff, who Mav, you know, and
he's been a guest on the show.
Yeah, Dave's been on the show a few times.
Okay, cool. Yeah. David and I are doing this religion and comic series, and this one is actually affordable whenever we get books published through it. So
nice.
So lots of stuff happening, and so if any of those things sound interesting,
well, we'll have a link to Matt's stuff in the show notes.
Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah. Wayne, what about you?
I got nothing this week.
Yay.
No, I take that back. This goes up next week. 2 weeks from tonight. 2 weeks from tonight, which is not the night you're listening to the show. So, like a week and a half from when this show goes up. I'm presenting at Community College of Butler. Butler Community College is doing a hour-long thing for their graphic novel club, essentially how to read comics. I'm going to talk about image-text interplay and things that a lot of people don't think about when they're reading comics, the idea of how the art works and how comics work on the page. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing that.
Yeah,
if you're
in
Butler,
linked in the show notes as well.
If you're in Butler, Pennsylvania, September, 16th, 19th, whatever that Thursday is. Let me look.
September? You mean...
Not September. That's
you said September.
Matt's thing.
Yeah, you meant March.
I did. March 19th. March 19th.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
March 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Linked in the show notes.
Sweet. Yeah.
And of course, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Maverick or on my blog at www.chrismaverick.com. You can follow the show on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, all the places, always at Vox Popcast. You can follow the show's blog at www.voxpopcast.com, where you will learn about whatever we're talking about next week. You can leave us comments that we try to address on the show when we're doing our commentary. You can give us suggestions for other shows. And please, this week, you definitely want to go there, look at the show notes, leave a comment, FanCast all of us. Again, I'm sure Hannah's listening to this and going, I cannot wait to find out which Riverdale actress I am. Like, she's absolutely listening to this right now and thinking that as she screams like obscenities at me through her phone. So that's what you get for missing a show. She's at a conference right now. Anyway, so if you enjoy the show, and we certainly hope you do, we hope you subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever the hell else you get podcasts from. And do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review, especially if you leave us that on iTunes. That helps other people find the show, especially if you write a review in addition to just leaving stars. Write something down, say what you love about us, and really, we just like the feedback. Podcasting is a very lonely endeavor where you're speaking out into the universe, into the great void, and you're just waiting for someone to speak back. It's very deep. But in the meantime, I would like to thank Maximilian of Thoughtform Music for our epic theme song, building ever so more epically and playing us out. I'd like to thank you at home for listening. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much. I've got one more thing to say, and it'll only take me a second. I've got 2 words that I want you all to remember. They're very important. And if I leave you with anything, I'm going to leave you with these 2 words. And those 2 words are, I'm Batman.